Welcome to Catholic Live, where leaders connect with future leaders. My name is Juan Hernandez. I am a junior at Catholic High School, and today we are excited to welcome Mr. Erik Nieves. So for those of you who don't know who Mr. Nieves is, he is a co-founder and CEO of Plus One Robotics, which is a software company developing 3D and AI-powered vision software for robots in warehouses and distribution centers. Prior to Plus One, Erik was technology director for Yaskawa Modern Robotics, one of the world's largest robot manufacturers, where he was responsible for the technology roadmap. During his 25-plus year tenure at Yaskawa, Erik held a variety of leadership positions in the U.S. and abroad. Erik serves on the board of directors for the Robotic Industries Association, or RIA, and is a frequent speaker and contributor to public policy on robotics and the U.S. Congressional Robotics Roadmap. Plus One Robotics is built on the premises that people are better than robots at anything that matters. And unabashed human acceptance of this, Erik believes that #robots work, people rule. A Texan by choice, Erik lives, works, and plays in San Antonio. So please welcome Mr. Nieves.
All right. We good? All right. So I was asked to talk about what it's like to run a startup, right? And I don't know how to separate that from my own personal story, so we're just going to talk about it all together. But I brought an encyclopedia, a grinder, and a robot programming interface. What could these three possibly have in common? Right. I hope you'll understand that by the time we're done. A Texan by choice. Right. I was born and raised on Long Island, but Mom moved to San Antonio when I was a sophomore in high school. Right. And I call San Antonio home as a result. The whole time I was growing up, we had a set of encyclopedias. You can probably still find these at your grandparents' house, but it's just a set of, it's a big set of books with all of, this information and knowledge on it. Well, the S was actually broken into two because there was so much content that began with the letter S. Well, the second one of those, SO to SZ, was always in my room, right? And if you were to open it, it would fall directly to not Spain, but space. Because I run a robot company today, but what I really wanted to do was space. I was fascinated by the whole subject. But I didn't want to be an astronaut. That was cool. But what I really wanted to do was build the rocket. Right? I wanted to build the rocket. So I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. Now, I wasn't sure what that really meant, but I knew that you got to work on rockets if you were really good at it. So I decided that's what I wanted to pursue. As it happens, when I graduated from high school, from Judson, I went to a small college in North Texas. And much to my dismay, they didn't have aeronautical engineering as a major. In fact, the school was so small, it didn't have engineering at all. At all. Well, how's this going to work? So instead, I chose the closest thing I could find to sort of those subjects. So I got a double major in math and physics. Brother, I got to tell you, I was going to starve as a physicist because I wasn't very good. In fact, the only part of the physics curriculum that I really, really got into, you can guess what it was? Astronomy. Of course it was. And so one of the things that I did like about this university is they had their own observatory. Cool. So I became the observatory rat. I would open it every Friday night. And, you know, we had a big 22-inch Cassegrain telescope, for those of you that know what that is. And, you know, it had a dome with a slit and all of that. And we would train it on whatever celestial body was of interest. Now, this was in 1988. It was one of the years that Halley's Comet was in the sky. Loved that. I thought that was really cool. In fact, it was so popular in, popular culture that when I opened the observatory on Friday night when Halley's Comet was in the sky, the line was way out the door. But I got to tell you, if I had one more person crawl up my little ladder, look inside the eyepiece, and say, "Is that it? I waited in line all this time and that's it?" I really thought I was going to strangle somebody, right? It was very disheartening. Not everybody was as enthused as I was about the fact that there was this piece of a broken meteor that was circling our solar system. Nobody cared. They just thought it was cool to, the event of it all. Truth is, I didn't expect I was going to make it in astronomy either. All right. Told you it was a small school. It was also a private school. What does that mean? Big dollars. Did I have them? No, I didn't. So I had to work. Every summer, I took whatever job I could find. Well, it turns out that in our school, this girl went to school with us, and she said, "Hey, my dad runs a factory in Minnesota. And their heavy period, their busiest time of year is in the summer. If you really want to make money, don't go work at Wendy's. Go up to Minnesota and work for my dad, because you can put in as many hours as you want." Cool. I needed as many hours as I could stand. So every summer after my sophomore year in college, a bunch of us would get in, a convoy of cars or whatever, and we would drive all the way from Texas, all the way up 35, on 35, still on 35, all the way to Minnesota on 35. We made a right turn off of 35, and like 6 or 7 miles later, there was the town of Dodge Center, Minnesota. What's Minnesota famous for? What's the motto of Minnesota? Remember? Probably not. 10,000 lakes. Right? Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes. Dodge County, Minnesota is the one county in the entire state that ain't got a single lake. Place just ugly. Right? What they did have was McNeilus truck manufacturing. And they made cement mixers. We went from space to this. I held a 10-pound Milwaukee electric grinder right about here, grinding down the welds on a cement mixer drum so that they could go paint it. I did this for hours and hours a day, right here. I would wake up in the mornings like this And I would have to crack my knuckles just to get started. Right? I didn't much enjoy that job, but man, it was a lot of hours. One day, it was actually at night because I worked the night shift. The foreman rolls up with his little cart and he says, "Erik, I hear you know something about computers." What year did I say this was? 1988. There wasn't that much to know about computers in 1988. So I figure the guy must be having problems with a printer driver or something, right? And he says, so I said, "Sure, I don't know that much, but it's gotta be better than this, whatever it is. I just want a break." And he said, "Get in the cart." And he drove me not to the office, but past the office and around the corner to this machine. And he goes, "See this machine? We bought this, and nobody knows how to make it run." Guess what it was? It wasn't a computer. It was an industrial robot. And this was its programming interface. Not exactly this one, but one like it. And he said, "If you can figure out how to make this run, we'd let you do this every night." You know what I did? What's the first thing you should do? RTM, people! Read the manual. Right? Read the manual. And so that's what I did. Now, the manual wasn't very well written because this robot came out of Japan, and it wasn't translated very well, but I kind of figured it out. And all of a sudden, I wasn't holding that grinder hours at a time anymore. I was loading some metal parts into some fixtures, hitting some clamps, walking over to this thing, hitting this green button, and sitting down for 8 minutes while the robot did its thing. And the dude gave me a raise because I could make this robot run. I thought to myself, this robot thing might just work out. I did that after my sophomore year. I did it after my junior year. I graduated. Somehow my wife and I got accepted into grad school, or my fiance at the time. And I still needed to make money to pay the old bill and have money for grad school. So even though I'd already graduated with a degree in mathematical physics, I drove myself to Minnesota to go work on my robot again. Funny thing is, I was there a couple of weeks, maybe a month after that. The same guy rolled back around. "Erik, guess what? We bought 2 more robots. We'd like you to do for those robots what you did for this one. Why don't you stay and work here?" What do you think I said? What do you think I did? No, I went over to the Dairy Queen in town and I called Texas. Who'd I call? Yeah, my fiance. And I'm like, "Brenda, they're offering me to stay for a year. What do you think we should do?" What'd she say? She was more rational. She's like, "Erik, we have assistantships at grad school. We've already got, lines on an apartment. We can't do this. I know you would like to, but we can't do this." I'm like, "You know what, Brenda? Yeah, you're probably right. But I'm going to probably have to come back here next summer. So I don't want to say anything to make him really mad. So I got to find a way to let him down easy." I formulated a plot. So I walked into his office, and he said, "So, are you going to stick around for the next year?" And I said, I don't know that I'll be able to do that." And he said, "Why? Are you still worried about those assistantships? You'll probably make more in 1 year here than you would. Then you can go back." he wasn't asking me to give up on that dream. He was saying, just defer it for a year and you'll be in a better position. I said, you know, I don't think I can do that. He said, how much money do you think it will take for you to stay? What? So in my plot, I never expected him to say anything like that. So I had no good response, figured out for that. So what'd I do? I gave him the first number that popped into my head. I said, oh, I don't know. It'd cost a lot. It'd probably be $1,000 a week. And he goes, $52,000 a year? Done. He called my bluff. I sat there flabbergasted. I mean, $52,000 is good money now. This was 1990. I'd never known anybody that made $1,000 a week. What'd I do? I went back to Dairy Queen. Brenda. And she's like, oh, I can hear it already. We're going to Minnesota. We did. I did that job for a year. I picked up that robot programming pendant. I programmed these 2 new robots to do all these other cement truck pieces, etc. I was probably done with that, the heavy lifting of that job in, 5, 6, 7 months. And then after that, it just got to put the parts in, throw the clamps, hit the green button, sit down. I didn't like that part of it as much anymore. I really liked this part, the programming and the engineering piece of it, right? So I called the company that made those robots. I said, hey, I've been over here in Minnesota. This is what I've been doing. Do you think there's a chance that you would like to have somebody like me on staff? They're like, huh. Why don't you come on down and talk to us? So I did. Much to my surprise, they really didn't care all that much that I had been programming those robots. Instead, they kept pointing to this one thing on my resume. They said, tell us about this astronomy thing. I'm like, why do you care about that? And they said, no, not the observatory part, the other part. Oh, you mean the instructor for the astronomy class? Yeah, I was the tutor for astronomy. And they're like, you can teach people that kind of thing? Yeah, we think you can teach people how to program robots then. What? I went to work for them, not as a robot programmer, but as an instructor. I taught people how to program and maintain these robots. I went to that company in 1991, and I didn't leave there until 2016. I was there for 25 years. In 25 years, you're going to do a lot of things no matter where you are. One of those things was in the mid-90s. After having set up the entire curriculum for all of the training classes and getting it accredited and doing all of that, we ended up in Mexico. We went there to set up the subsidiary of the robot company for Latin America. I was supposed to be there 2 years. Loved it so much, we were there nearly 5. My son was born there. Mexican dual citizen. All right? And then I came back and I started running the research and development group for that company. And I did that for the last 5 or 6 years that I was there. Right? Somewhere along that journey, the robot industry really hit on hard times. It was 2007, 2008, the Great Recession. And when that happened, people stopped buying cars. And when people stopped buying cars, factories stopped buying robots. Because most robots, that's what they do. So we had to lay people off at Yaskawa. Probably the first time that it ever happened in any kind of substantive way. And the CEO, he came to me and he said, Erik, we got to go find something else for robots to do. Something that isn't tied to the car parts. Because we can't keep doing this every time the automotive market goes up and goes down. So me and one of my colleagues, we spent 2 years evaluating all the other verticals, the other industries that could use robots. We looked at lots of things. What do you think the first thing I looked at was? Close enough. Aerospace, right? I figured, hey, Boeing must need a lot of robots. Turns out they need a lot of holes in their fuselages, one fewer hole than they actually ended up, if you've been following the news. But they didn't need that many robots. So we're like, well, so much for my great dream of finally bringing all of my passions together. So we looked at other things, clinical lab automation. Should we have robots taking over handling blood and urine samples in labs? Because nobody wants to do that anymore. Well, that was a nice piece of business, but that wasn't going to move the world. In the end, it was really only 2 industries that we could find that were big enough and that were going to be robot friendly enough. One of them was electronics assembly. Everybody on here has got a glowing screen in their pocket, right? So we could have pursued that. The only problem with that is all the electronic assembly is going to come from Southeast Asia, no matter what you do, right? So that wasn't going to solve that problem. Instead, the other one was supply chain, warehouses. Why? Why would warehouses be fertile ground for robots? What is it that robots are good at? We talk a lot in the robot industry about the 3 Ds of robotics. Anybody know what they are? Robots excel when tasks are dirty, dangerous, or degrading to the human spirit, meaning bone-achingly dull. The 3 Ds of robotics: dirty, dangerous, or dull. Well, when you look at tasks inside the warehouse, what do you see? It may not be that dirty. It might not be dangerous, but boy, is it ever dull. Because all you do is go from here to here, take this one, put it over there, pick up that one, set it over here. It's just dull. So we said, hey, there's probably going to be opportunity for robots there. And so we tried to make that work. In the end, I learned pretty quickly the warehouse isn't a robot problem. It's a vision problem, right? Because in the factory where you're making those car parts, in the factory where I made those cement mixers, the thing that they have in common is repeatability. I'm going to build the same part 100,000 times in the next 4 years. So the robot just needs to have a memory. If I'm going to spot weld these 6 spots on the Toyota Tundra, I'm going to do it the same way for the next 8 years. So I don't need to see. I just have to remember where they are. But the warehouse wasn't like that. The warehouse was all different every time. Because I don't know what you're going to order today on Amazon or Temu or whatever, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't what you ordered last week. And I'm even more sure it's not what you're going to order next week. So everything is changing all the time. Memory wasn't good enough anymore. We needed vision. And that's how the startup happened. Once you acknowledge that there is a problem, and you understand that problem to its depth, that's when you're ready. And so I got together with two colleagues that were here in San Antonio at Southwest Research. They were working on computer vision. They didn't know about the warehouse problem, but they knew about the technology. And I said, you know what? We need to bring these two things together because I see a need. And that's how Plus One Robotics got started. Today, we're, 60, 70 people. We're here in San Antonio as our headquarters. We've got an office in Boulder, Colorado. We have a subsidiary in Europe, all solving the same problem. How do you apply robots to warehouses where everything is different every single time? And that's it, right? The reason I wanted to walk you through that is the most important element in getting to where I am today was really an openness to new experiences. Do what is before you. Just try it. One of my mentors, or people that I admire, is also here in San Antonio. His name is Dirk Elmendorf. And Dirk was one of the founders of Rackspace, right? The biggest tech company in San Antonio. He was the founder. Do you know what he did while I was in college doing, going up to Minnesota? He went to work for a temp agency. And he said, whatever you've got, I'll do anything for 2 weeks. And he did everything that they gave him. It didn't matter because he had an openness to experiences. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do, right? Just be open to what's before you because you don't know where it's going to lead. It took, but when you figure it out, you'll see how it was all interrelated. I think that's really cool, the way you can follow the thread of your experiences to the outcome where you land. I told you that one of my experiences at Yaskawa was being in Mexico for those 4 years. I went there supposedly just to make sure that customers of Yaskawa that had robots in Mexico would have somebody that could help them, repair them, etc. But it ended up growing, and we ended up, having a full subsidiary down there. Guys, that was my MBA. I went down there to pick up the teach pendant and help folks, but by the time I was done doing import-export law, finding a site and establishing an office, setting pricing, setting a marketing plan, I didn't know at the time that I was actually building my experiences to match that of a master's in business administration. So when I finally decided to start Plus One, all of that stuff from Yaskawa in Mexico all came rushing back, and I needed all of it to do this, right? So, the takeaway is be open to the experiences because you don't know where they're going to take you, but I can guarantee you, you will at some point find the thread that pulled them all together when you get to do what you really want to do.